No, you're sounding good.
Okay, must just be the headphones here.
It's not like super loud, is it?
No, it's quite it's the volume's fine. It's just there's a little fuzz to it when I hear. So I'm just wondering if that's on the audio or if that's just from the headphones here. It sounds like it's probably just from the headphones.
Yeah, it sounds like it. We go live in 10 seconds.
Okay, sounds good. Greetings and welcome to Matenaer On Air. I am not Jane Matenaer, nor am I Greg Bach, but I am Dan Shafer, and I'm here as your guest host this morning on Matenaer On Air. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are unfamiliar with me and my work, I am a regular guest here on Matenaer On Air. I join the show every Friday at 11 a.m. to Recombobulate because I am the founder of the Recombobulation area. It's a weekly opinion column and online publication based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yes, it is named after the goofy post-security area at the Milwaukee airport where you're discombobulated, you get through security, you're getting your shoes, you're getting your bags, you're getting all your things, and you take a moment, you take a seat, you piece everything together, and I think, that's what I'm hoping to bring to you today on Matenaer On Air. It's, Christmas can be discombobulating for a lot of people, so we're going to recombobulate here on Matenaer On Air. Calvin is on the board. It is the day after Christmas. This day always has a certain specific feel to it, doesn't it, Calvin?
Yeah, it always is kind of weird. It's a little empty around the station, and yeah, all the excitement of the holidays is over. So yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah, it's like almost like there's all the build up to the holidays, coming up to Christmas, coming up to, Hanukkah, whatever you might be celebrating this time of year. And, the day after Christmas is always, it has a certain specific feel to it. It's, it's like, I think of it like it's when you get married. Right. Yeah. Everything is building up to the wedding and building up to the wedding. And you're thinking about the wedding and you're doing all of these things and you get married and it happens and it goes through and you have a great time. And then the next day it's just like, all right, what now? You wake up and you look around and you try to make sense of the world that you're now in and you're and it's just kind of this letdown feel. It has a specific feel to it. So asking the listeners today, if you want to be part of the conversation with us, join us, call or text 855-752-4842. Again, that is 855-752-4842. So what do you like to do on December 26th? Are you immediately headed back to the stores, going back, maybe using a couple gift cards, going shopping? Are you spending a couple extra days with family? Maybe you traveled a great distance to get to where you're going, and spending a little extra time this week between Christmas and New Year's to spend that time with family. Is today a travel day for you? Are you on the road? Are you making your way across the state, listening to us here on the Civic Media Network, spending your morning with us as you make your way to your next destination or make it back to where you're going? Maybe you slept with your family at your parents' house, something like that, making your way to your next destination. Is that how you're spending your day? Do you have any other specific traditions that you might like to spend on December 26th? Or are you just ready to be done with it? You're ready to turn the page. Maybe you're sick of all that Christmas music, that you've been hearing nothing but since Thanksgiving. Maybe you're ready to flip your dial back to some regular scheduled music. Your Spotify playlist is maybe a little bit more populated with, just regular music and not the Christmas music that it might be. Let us know in the comments if you're watching on the live stream. Let us know on the talk and text line. Again, that's 855-752-4842. And I am your guest host this morning. My name is Dan Shafer. I am the founder of the Recombobulation Area, which is now part of the Civic Media Network. So if you're unfamiliar with me and my work, go check out the Recombobulation Area.news. We've got the most recent article that I posted there was our year in review piece. So you can take a look back at all of the kind of standout stories that we were able to put together throughout the course of the year, myself and the regular contributors at the Recombobulation Area. Lots of great stuff this year. Obviously, an election year, so a lot of it had to do with the 2024 campaign, with the election, with the convention in Milwaukee, with the RNC in Milwaukee, the DNC in Chicago. New maps that we had this year. That was obviously a big deal in the state and something that we have covered quite a bit at the Recombobulation Area over the years. So if you want to check out what we're all about, come check out that year in review. So I have it. The title of that one is 2024, the year in recombobulation. So if you're discombobulated on the year that was, you want to recombobulate yourself, come on back, check out our year in recombobulation issue. Certainly a very busy year for me, having a front row seat to so many of the things that happened over the course of the year. And in this, right in the middle of things here in Wisconsin, here in southeastern Wisconsin. And we're broadcasting today out of Radio Park and Racine. So if you have thoughts on the year that was, on the big stories of the year, on what really stood out to you, give us a call, shoot us a text, 855-752-4842. And if you have thoughts on what's going on December 26th, how this feels, the day after Christmas, it's almost, maybe you're piecing some things back together after a busy day. I know I'm a parent of young children, so Christmas is extraordinarily busy for us. And I have young kids, and it's very exciting on Christmas morning. But it can be very exhausting on the parents to get up at ridiculous hours for the kids who want to get down to that Christmas tree and open those presents. So I know my kids were ready to go in the morning on Christmas morning at about 5, which was entirely too early for me, just in general. I'm not a morning person at all. 5 o'clock is the middle of the night as far as I'm concerned. But the kids were ready to go, get ready to open those gifts from Santa under the tree very, very early in the morning. So a little bit of an exhaustion toward the end of that day. Last night I was pretty beat after a very long day with the kids, but they were so excited. They got some great presents that were on their list. They sent a couple letters to Santa in the days and weeks before. So that was very exciting. So it was a very great Christmas for us. And now turning the page. It's December 26th. We're back to work. We're getting after it. Busy day for all of us here. So let us know how you're spending your December 26th. Are you driving around doing some next day Christmas shopping, maybe making some returns? Maybe that sweater didn't fit. Maybe that, you're trying to use that gift card. Let us know what you're up to, how you're spending your December 26th. And we are glad that you are spending it with us here at Matenaer On Air. I'm your guest host this morning. My name is Dan Shafer. I am the founder of the Recombobulation Area. Regular Matenaer On Air listeners might know me as I join the show every Friday at 11. And today I am guest hosting as well. We have a couple guests that will be joining us over the course of the program today. At 11 a.m., we'll be joined by Civic Media's own Luke Mathers. Luke and I will recombobulate on a number of things, and you might know that Luke and I are both very big fans of the Milwaukee Bucks. So even though they did not play on Christmas Day yesterday, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Milwaukee Bucks. They play tonight in Milwaukee against the Brooklyn Nets, so that's going to be a fun one. But they didn't get a chance to play on Christmas Day. First year in quite a while that the Bucks did not play on Christmas Day. So that's going to be, kind of an interesting thing to talk about. Are they overlooking the most exciting? Is the NBA overlooking the most exciting player in the league, Giannis Antetokounmpo, by not scheduling the Bucks on Christmas Day? Interesting. But there was also a lot of football yesterday too. Seems like the NFL is trying to come in on the NBA's territory on having those Christmas Day games. So we'll talk to Luke a little bit about that. Talked about where the Milwaukee Bucks are at this stage of the season. And we're also going to be joined this morning at 10:30 by Alice Herman, who is a writer at The Guardian. She wrote a very big story that was just published late last week, and I want to make sure that this story gets the attention that it deserves. So the headline for this is Major Trump Donors Who Complained of Immigrant Invasion Used Mexican Workers Illegally, sources allege. So this exclusive report from Alice Herman and her team, it's another writer for The Guardian, wrote this story. This was published last Friday, December 20th. So this is still pretty fresh. And if you're unfamiliar with Uline is based in southeastern Wisconsin in Pleasant Prairie. It is a big and growing, kind of shipping and packaging empire that they have been growing in southeastern Wisconsin. Office and shipping supply company. It is owned by billionaires Dick and Liz Uline. Dick and Liz Uline are the founders of this company, and they are some of the biggest donors in the country for political causes. They actually spent more this election cycle than even Elon Musk, funding Republican candidates and conservative causes around the country. And so I think, as many of the ads run by the super PAC, run by Liz and Dick Uline, many of those ads were about, what was happening on the border, as so many of those ads were. And so it's going to be interesting to have a conversation with Alice here to talk about what is going on at Uline in terms of using immigrant labor over the course of their business there. So we will be talking to Alice at about 10:30. We'll be talking to Luke Luke Mathers will join the show just in the 11 o'clock hour. And I am going to be taking your calls, listening to your texts throughout the show here. And we're excited for all of you to be joining us this morning on Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Network. Again, my name is Dan Shafer. I'm your guest host today, and we are encouraging you to call and text, join the show, have a conversation. Let us know what you're up to on this December 26th, this day after Christmas, as the tinsel cloud clears. we get back to our regularly scheduled programming after the Christmas holiday here. So thank you so much for joining us here on Matenaer On Air. Stick with us. Give us a call. Shoot us a text, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. And we will be headed to break right about now. Stick with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air with your guest host, me, Dan Shafer. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. I'm your guest host this morning. My name is Dan Shafer. Thank you so much for joining us today on your December 26th, the day after Christmas. We're recombobulating here on Matenaer On Air. My name is Dan Shafer. I am the founder of the Recombobulation Area, a weekly opinion column and online publication covering news and politics in Milwaukee and Wisconsin. And I am your guest host this morning on Matenaer On Air. And we are recombobulating after, perhaps a discombobulating stretch for many people, or at least a busy one with the Christmas holiday just in our rearview mirror. So, this day after Christmas has a certain specific feel to it. And whether you're, getting right back into the stores, doing some holiday shopping, whether you're headed back to work, whether you're spending some extra time with family, whether you're traveling, maybe you're headed to the actual recombobulation area, spending some time there, and going through Milwaukee's airport on your way back home today. We are glad you're joining us here on the Civic Media Network. And we want you guys to let us know what you're up to today as well. So let us know what you're doing on your December 26th. Give us a call. Shoot us a text, 855-752-4842. Join the conversation. We're live streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, on the platform formerly known as Twitter. And we are getting ready for a great show here for you today. We've got a couple guests that are going to be joining us. Luke Mathers of Civic Media is going to be joining us in the 11 o'clock hour to talk about a whole host of different things, but in particular the Milwaukee Bucks. As you might know, Luke and I are both big fans of the Milwaukee Bucks. So we're going to be talking about Bucks. We're going to be talking about some of the news of the day when Luke joins us in the second hour of the show after 11 o'clock. And at 10:30, we're going to be joined by Alice Herman, who, along with another writer, Stephanie Kirchgasser. She'll have to make sure that I got the pronunciation correct on that byline there. But Alice wrote this story late last week for The Guardian about a major Wisconsin employer and major Republican political donor. The headline for this piece is Major Trump Donors Who Complained of Immigrant Invasion Used Mexican Workers Illegally, sources allege. And I'm going to just go ahead and read you the first couple paragraphs of this story so that you understand what exactly is going on here, because I think this is a pretty big deal. This is a big story. Those stories that can be published on a Friday before Christmas, they can often end up in kind of news dump territory. So as a longtime print media journalist myself. So I worked for Biz Times Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Business Journal, Milwaukee Magazine, a number of different places over the course of my career as a journalist in and around Milwaukee. And when certain people, whether it's a business, maybe doing some layoffs, or a politician trying to bury some bad news, those often end up in stories that break late on a Friday when maybe some journalists or others maybe aren't paying quite the same amount of attention. But I want to give a little bit more attention to this story that was published last week, Friday, because I think this is a big deal. This is the type of story that I think Democrats should be talking more about. And I think it is, it speaks to an issue for those of you who've been listening over the course of the morning. This was a big topic on the Earl Ingram show before I joined on the air here for Matenaer On Air. And I think, the immigration issue and the Donald Trump's promises of mass deportation in a second Trump term, not only is this extremely troubling, but it is, I think we have to look at this in terms of solutions to an immigration issue as well, and look at who are the problematic actors in this as well. So I think you could talk about people on the individual level who are, people who are immigrating to places like Wisconsin. There's a number of migrant workers who work on dairy farms and other farms throughout the state. All sorts of other jobs that people might be moving to the United States for, moving to Wisconsin for, immigrating to this country to build a better life for themselves. But there are companies that maybe have some perhaps hypocritical viewpoints on this. And I think the Uline company and the Liz and Dick Uline, the founders of the office and shipping supply company that is based here in southeastern Wisconsin, They are the focus of this story because they are some of the biggest political donors in the country. They actually spent more backing Republicans and backing conservative causes in the 2024 election cycle than even the richest man in the world, Elon Musk. So I'll just read through for you the first couple paragraphs from this story from Alice Herman at The Guardian. So first, a company owned by two of Donald Trump's mega donors has routinely brought dozens of its workers from Mexico to staff its warehouses in Wisconsin and other locations, even though they do not appear to have permission to work in the United States, according to a Guardian investigation. Uline, a giant Wisconsin-based office and shipping supply company controlled by billionaires Liz and Dick Uline, shuttles in its own workers from Mexico, who are using tourist visas and visas meant for employees who are entering the U.S. temporarily to receive professional training known as B-1 visas. But instead of being part of a dedicated training program, the Mexican employees stay for 1 to 6 months and, sources with direct knowledge of the matter allege, perform work in Uline's U.S. warehouses. Lawyers and immigrant advocates told The Guardian they believe the alleged practice is likely illegal and could be exploitative of the workers enrolled in the program. The company has allegedly used employees without proper work permits, even as Dick Uline's super PAC, Restoration PAC, supported Trump's presidential campaign with a TV advertisement attacking his opponent Kamala Harris for allowing an immigrant, quote, invasion at the U.S.-Mexico border. So we're going to be talking about that with Alice Herman after the break here at 10:30. She's the author of this piece at The Guardian. I think this is an important one. I think this one we should be paying close attention to because as we talk about money in politics, we talk about the messages that we saw so often during the campaign season here in the state of Wisconsin. I think it's important to take a close look at what they're up to. And I think given how big the immigration and border issue has been over the course of this campaign and what it portends for a second Trump term, I think practices like this warrant some real closer look. So we're going to get into that after the break with Allison Herman of The Guardian. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. I'm your guest host today, Dan Shafer. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Good morning, Alice. Can you hear me all right?
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right, awesome. I can hear you well too. We come back in just about 4 minutes.
Okay, sweet. Is this like, can people tune into this visually live as well, or is it just audio? Either's fine.
Yes, it is. It is visual as well. So it's streaming on YouTube and Twitter and a couple other places. Facebook too. Still, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, on Facebook too.
Yep. So yeah, it's the video live stream as well.
Sounds good.
And then, I don't know if you were hearing just before I went to break there, I read the first few graphs of your story.
Okay,
and
great.
I probably botched the co-byline
that's fine.
Your colleague at the Guardian. So I'll have to ask you to make sure.
Don't ask me because I might mispronounce it also. Please don't ask me.
Okay. Well, I'll just own that one on my own. Then I'll just introduce you as one of the writers of this story as well.
Sorry.
No problem. And then are you able to join for the full half hour here, or do you want to just have it be the first? I think it's a 16 minute segment that we come back to. Yeah.
15 minutes.
15-minute segment. Yeah.
Yeah, either's fine.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, we can kind of play it by ear if we want, if we get into it, if we get some call or something like that, maybe, we'll kind of stick with it. And if not, we'll figure it out at the break then.
Totally.
For you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like a heads up, I can mostly, I can't get like too far into sourcing and stuff like that, but I can hopefully share a little bit more than what's in the article, but it'll mostly be sort of what we published. Just a heads up.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. And my cat might Zoom bomb me.
Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Thank you so much for joining us here across the Civic Media Network. I am not Jane Matenaer, nor am I Greg Bach, but I am Dan Shafer, and I am your guest host this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I am the founder of the Recombobulation area and the political editor here at Civic Media. And we are talking today a little bit about immigration policy and how that impacts and how that's playing out with some of Trump's biggest donors who own a company here in Wisconsin. And so we were just I was just reading a little bit from this story before the break here. And we are now joined by the author of this story, Alice Herman of The Guardian. Alice, thank you so much for joining us here this morning on Matenaer On Air.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I appreciate it.
So as we were discussing before the break here, you wrote this story. I think this story is a pretty big deal. So the headline again is Major Trump donors who complained of immigrant invasion used Mexican workers illegally, sources allege. So Alice, tell me about this story. Tell me about what you and your colleagues at The Guardian found in reporting this piece.
So sources contacted The Guardian with a tip about a program that Uline was allegedly running within their company, where they would bring workers from their facilities in Mexico to staff the warehouses in the US, so in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And what we were initially told was that the workers who were coming up to do wage labor in those warehouses, allegedly, were working on visas that would not have permitted them to do that type of, to do wage labor at all. And, over the course of this investigation, we were able to talk to workers who confirmed that they had come on tourist visas, who had been told that they were coming to the US to do professional training, which would be permitted, but then described basically doing warehouse work and not in doing the same kind of work that their American counterparts, their US counterparts were doing, but in fact for the same wages they were making in Mexico. And we weren't able to track down the specifics on that, except that, the wage allegedly was the same as the wage they were making in Mexico, plus maybe a certain travel bonus. But that was sort of the gist of the story that we were able to get from sources who were familiar with this program, which was called the Shuttle Support Program. And then we were able to corroborate with workers who had participated in it, and looking at some internal documents from the company as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So walk me through what a normal process for this might look like if this was, completely above board. So these people who are migrating from Mexico essentially for employment purposes, right? So they're these B1 visas would be for job training, right? So if the people who were coming were going to be trained for a job, that would be part of that particular visa program. But what your story is saying is that that's what they thought was going to happen, but that's not what happened in practice. Is that correct?
So we don't know, we don't know if every worker was aware of exactly what they would be doing in the US. It's totally possible that there are people who had, who knew that they were going to be working in the warehouse, but who had an implicit understanding that they were to tell border officials that they were going to be here for professional training. And just like for a little context, the type of training that a B1 visa would typically allow, according to the lawyers that we talked to, would be like a workshop or some kind of certification program. And the Wisconsin-based immigration lawyer that I talked to was initially skeptical of the prospect of blue collar workers who are in a warehouse coming up for up to 6 months at a time to participate in a professional training. Like it didn't add up for him. And then with, all of the evidence that we were looking at, he said that he thought it was almost certainly illegal.
Mm-hmm. We're talking to Alice Herman, who is a writer from The Guardian, who just wrote this piece on the multimillionaire founders of Uline, billionaires Uline, Liz and Dick Uline, the owners of the Wisconsin-based Uline company. The story said, again, the headline for the story: major Trump donors who complained of immigrant invasion used Mexican workers illegally. Sources alleged. So obviously this was a big issue in the campaign, and this was a big issue that the Ulines in particular, funded. How do you see what their rhetoric is in some of these campaign ads, and how that fits with what they are doing as a company at Uline? So
we were able to find one ad that was an anti-Harris attack ad that said that she had opened the border and allowed for, and the language that they used was for an invasion, which is, inflammatory anti-immigrant rhetoric and exactly the same type of rhetoric that Trump used on the campaign trail. But that was just one ad. But they donated.
We heard a lot of that rhetoric over the past 12 months, haven't we?
A lot of that rhetoric, yeah. And that was the immigration and the border was Trump's top issue. And so the fact that the Ulines donated more than $100 million to in support of Trump's campaign, I think tells you that at the very least that kind of rhetoric wasn't disqualifying for them, and they even funded a commercial that embraced that type of rhetoric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I think it was, I don't know if it was the Washington Post or somebody like that. They kind of ran through the list of the top donors of the whole election cycle, and I think the Ulines came in second, which was ahead of Elon Musk. So I think
That's correct.
there's so many people right now in the wake of this election talking about Elon Musk and his influence on the Trump campaign, on the campaign more broadly. But right in our backyard here in the Midwest, the owners of one of the biggest companies in the region, biggest employers in the region, they are central to this conversation, I think, in a lot of ways. And looking for staff at their warehouses or whatever it might be. And it seems like this shuttle support program kind of flies in the face of what a lot of those campaign ads seem to suggest. And I think I wonder what type of if this is maybe the tip of the iceberg on something here, right? Was that the kind of what you seem to come across in this reporting as well?
I don't think we know how far this goes. We're certainly open to tips and as soon as the story ran, started hearing from people who wanted to talk more. But yeah, I mean, who knows how far this goes? What we understand is this program at least went on for about 3 years. We haven't heard anything from the company, so we don't know, if they are continuing to run the program, if they've abandoned it. We reached out to them with an extremely detailed list of questions about the story and they told, through a spokesperson, they told us they were not going to comment. So, and we haven't heard anything since the story ran either. I did want to just say one thing about the Ulines and how, they donated even more than Musk and just their power and influence. I think in Wisconsin, for people who are following the news, like Uline, or even if you're just like, buy office supplies, Uline is a big name. But
right.
I think compared to
people get those catalogs in the mail, right? Yeah,
I know, but I think compared to other like GOP mega donors, they have flown somewhat under the radar. They're not a household name like the Koch brothers, but because I think it's important to mention this, and in particular Dick Uline, have donated incredible sums of money to the conservative movement and in particular to far right causes. So for example, after January 6th, it came out, I think it was WBEZ in Chicago who first broke this story, that Dick Uline had bankrolled the group Tea Party Patriots, which was one of the organizations that orchestrated the march to the Capitol that devolved into or turned into an insurrectionary riot. So there are countless other examples of far right politicians that the Uline family has backed. So it's just, I think it's notable and kind of remarkable how much money they're willing to throw around, and the fact that they are directing their money into really far right causes as well.
Yeah, and I think their sphere of influence seems to have grown pretty considerably over the years as well. And I was, just from being in political media and following these types of things in Wisconsin over the years, I think they were one of Ron Johnson's biggest donors early in his political career. I think they were his single biggest donor in his 2016 re-election campaign. The Ulines get very involved in state legislative races in Wisconsin as well. I know that they made a huge donation to the Republican Assembly Campaign Committee late in that cycle that I think really helped those Republicans who were able to keep the Republican majority in the state assembly as well. And it just seems like, I think there was a New York Times piece a few years ago saying that they're the kind of the quiet Trump donors and quiet. They seem not so quiet anymore, right? And I think stories like this one really invites more scrutiny of the type of practices that they bring at Uline as well, does it not?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And you're right that they are not only involved in national politics. It seems like there's a particular interest in Wisconsin politics, to a certain extent, Illinois politics as well. I know that Dick Uline was putting money behind a gubernatorial candidate a few years ago in Illinois. And just in 2023, his super PAC was spending really lavishly on Dan Kelly's state Supreme Court race. So
that's right.
I think we should all be looking out for where and if he's spending money on the next state Supreme Court election this year or in 2025.
Certainly. And I think, sometimes when I tweet about this, I'll get some Republicans in my mentions that will say, oh, Democrats have a lot of billionaire donors too. And yeah, those billionaire donors should should be scrutinized as well. But I think we cannot overlook what's happening in the Uihleins and their sphere of influence as well, because they own a large company in Wisconsin. They are based in the Midwest. I think they were the single biggest donor backing Eric Hovde in the Senate campaign in their the Restoration PAC that you mentioned in this piece as well. So if there was a Democratic counterpart doing something similar, being the second biggest donor in the country during an election cycle, I think that should invite scrutiny as well. I think that should, we should be you should be having investigative stories like what you put together at the Guardian as well about them. But I think because, and so I don't think the Uihleins should be looked over just because, they're backing conservative candidates. Why aren't you looking at both sides? Well, we're looking at these individuals and this company because their influence is really, really growing. And they are becoming one of the major players in kind of the Trump era of Republican politics. And I think, again, stories like this just show the complexity of immigration law, for one. And I think if you can stick around after the break, I'd like to talk a little bit further about some of the details of that aspect as well. But I think we can't overlook the importance of just looking at what the Uihleins are doing on a day-to-day basis. And I think, as Trump is stacking his cabinet with billionaire after billionaire after billionaire, we should be looking at what Dick and Liz Uihlein are doing in the Midwest and doing in Wisconsin as well, because it's not just, high-profile people like Elon Musk who are influencing our politics as well. We might not see a tweet from Dick Uihlein or, a campaign stump speech from Liz Uihlein, but they are incredibly influential individuals, not only on a national scale, but here in Wisconsin. They get involved in those Senate races. They get involved in those state Supreme Court races. They get involved in the state Senate, state Assembly, and we should be, like this piece does, we should be critical of their efforts as well. So Alice Herman of The Guardian is our guest here. She's going to stick with us for one more segment to talk more about this latest piece. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. I'm your guest host this morning. My name is Dan Shafer. We'll be right back.
Well, I can tell your plan, you're to heed my words. Down on your knees, oh, Come on.
Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. I'm your guest host this morning. My name is Dan Shafer. I'm the founder of the Recombobulation area and the political editor here at Civic Media. We are joined for this segment of the show by Alice Herman of The Guardian, who wrote a really important piece that was published last week. The headline, Major Trump Donors Who Complained of Immigrant Invasion Used Mexican Workers Illegally. An exclusive report, experts believe the alleged shuttle support program used by Uline, a company owned by billionaires Liz and Dick Uline, is likely illegal and exploitative of workers. Alice, I think we were talking before about just the political influence of the Ulines themselves. But I want to talk a little bit about what you found about what the practice of what this company is doing in this shuttle support program. I think a lot of us can get pretty confused by the legalese of it all when it comes to these immigration issues, because it's very complicated, and it's not just, filling out the right form or whatever it might be when it comes to immigration. There's a lot of complexity to the system. So can you break that side of this piece down for us, at least, what the Ulines are doing with these programs, this shuttle support program, how it should be used, how they're using it, and what you found and learned over the course of this report?
So what we heard from immigration lawyers and labor lawyers was just that it would probably be hard to run this kind of program above board. Like, it is really hard to get a work visa in the US, whether you're coming as regardless of the type of labor that you're doing. And it's hard for employers to secure work visas for employees. I'm not an immigration law expert, but that was the gist of, that was like basically the understanding that I came away with from conversations with people who are experts in that area. And so part of the story is that, like, we don't have clear and functional avenues for workers to be in the US, like legally and able to exercise their rights as workers here, the way that a US citizen or resident would be able to. There aren't a lot of avenues for workers to seek that, or for employers to seek that. And so this alleged program, was, if it was happening the way that our sources were describing it and the way that we understood it to be happening, would have been, the lawyers we talked to said it would have just been totally flaunting that law, by, instead of trying to go through what would probably be a very complicated process that may not have, yielded results, instead hiring workers on visas that don't permit work.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what I think people don't get about this immigration issue, is that it is not just like, if somebody wants to come here and get a job in Wisconsin for Uline or whatever it might be, it's not just like filling out the right paperwork and doing the right thing. It's just, there's not the same number of paths to citizenship that I think people might understand. And I think that is, I think the Trump campaign and the Republican Party really exploited the fact that this is a really complicated process, and they just really tried to oversimplify the issue and say, hey, we need mass deportations, we need this, that, and the other thing. But I think there's so much complexity in this system, and I think that, it seems like, from what your reporting is suggesting, is that Uline is essentially using this kind of loophole almost in the system to profit from it, and to get additional, to hire people in ways that are probably not legal, but it's hard to say. It's like this gray area.
So if this program is what our sources told us it is, and if it, which is to say, if they are hiring people on tourist visas or B1 visas to come to the US and work in the warehouses, that would likely not even be a gray area. That would likely just be not
It would
permitted.
just be illegal. Yeah.
So I just wanted to make one other really quick point about, we don't know if every worker knew, we don't know whether they were told you're going to be here for training. We don't know if some people were told you're not training, but tell border officials that you're here for training. What we know is that there was an implicit understanding that workers were to, what sources told us was that there's an implicit understanding that workers were to tell border officials that they're coming here to do one thing, when in fact they ended up in the US doing something entirely different, which also raised questions with some of the advocates that we talked to about whether this might have constituted labor trafficking, because if a worker is being told that they're coming to the US to do something and then they're here doing something else, like we don't know all of the details of how much how free the workers were to move as they pleased while they were in the US. We don't know whether they were holding on to their own passports or whether the company was. There are a lot of questions that the advocates that we talked to flagged for labor trafficking as well. I just wanted to highlight that.
It's a really important issue, and I think this is some terrific reporting that you've shined a light on an important issue here as well. So once again, Alice Herman of The Guardian, the piece is Major Trump donors who complained of immigrant invasion used Mexican workers illegally, sources allege. I encourage you all to take a look and spend some time with that one. I think it's an important report. Alice, thank you so much for joining us here on Matenaer On Air.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it.
And we'll be right back with Luke Mathers after the break.
Mr. Mathers, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, Luke.
How are we doing, Dan?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. Good interview. Look at you
Yeah.
doing the meaty journalism on a day where no one's working.
How'd that one turn out? I was glad that she was able to make that one work.
Yeah, I think it sounded good. I didn't get to listen to the whole thing. I was kind of in and out as I was prepping in the studio here, but
Yeah.
it sounded like good stuff.
Yeah. All right.
And Disney World, that's fun.
I mean, they're the perfect age for it, you know.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have fun with it.
That should be fun. Is that a spring break thing or?
That's gonna be a spring break thing. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Yeah, we should be in good shape. Otherwise, I'm just making sure I don't have. I'm not echoing, am I?
No, you sound great.
Okay. Cool.
Not on my end, at least. Cal stepped out for a second, so I'm gonna go get
you
myself
would-
a quick drink of water before we
Yeah.
get back at after the break.
Sounds
here.
good. Yeah, we got 5 minutes here.
All right. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. I am not Jane Matenaer, nor am I Greg Bach, but I am Dan Shafer, and I am your guest host this morning on Matenaer On Air. Thank you so much for joining us and spending some time with us today on this December 26th morning. My name is Dan Shafer. I am the guest host today. I am the founder of the Recombobulation area and the political editor here at Civic Media. If you'd like to join the conversation at all today, the talk and text line is open, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. And we've got another guest who's going to be joining us for a little while here. Civic Media's own Luke Mathers is joining us today. Luke, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's this day after Christmas always has a certain specific feel to it. So it's like there's so much building up to this one day, and then it's over, and it's like, all right, do we pull the tree down? Do we just move on? We turn off the Christmas music, whatever it might be. It's got a certain feel to it, doesn't it?
I think that the Christmas music definitely comes to an end. Maybe a song here or there today. Our tree does not come down for some time, though. My wife loves the Christmas tree, and so that will be up until mid-January.
Mid-January. See, that's
Yeah.
a while. We'll have the tree up for probably past New Year's or whatever. But once we get past that, it's it just becomes like we get a real tree. So we have the. So, oh, there you go. Both we're in the real tree. But like cleaning up those pine needles and like running the risk of the kids or the dog knocking over the tree, shattering some ornaments. The dog's already taken out a handful of ornaments this year because she's nuts. So that's a worry that we have. But going into mid-January, that's at least it's not like the whole winter with the tree in the house.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Aurora's a puppy. She just turned 1 on Saturday, so we were very nervous because this is her first year with the tree. She was she was born last December, and we picked her up in February. But I had no idea what to expect with a puppy and the live tree. We put all of the really nice ornaments. We like to get we get one from wherever we go. So we collect ornaments as like we were lucky enough to travel to Europe again this year. We were in Europe last year, so we've picked up ornaments from the different countries that we visit. And so we've got some expensive and hard to replace ornaments. Those all went really high on the tree this year because we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Thankfully she's been really good though. We just have a tendency, I think we made it last year where the Christmas decorations went away in the final week of the NFL regular season. We made the joke that when Scott Hansen leaves Red Zone, it's when we pack up Scott Hansen for the day, or for the year, that's when we pack up the Christmas decorations too. And so I want to say it's like it's mid to early January, I think, is when that happens.
So you sync it to the NFL calendar. So that's the real thing driving all of this.
Yes.
Not the holidays themselves, but the NFL calendar.
The end of the holidays in our household is the end of the NFL regular season.
Okay. So it's like the whole thing that people are talking about with Jordan Love and Toyotathon now.
Exactly.
You're scheduling around the Jordan Love Toyotathon run as much as you are scheduling things around the holiday season.
Exactly. It's just
That's
very, very similar aspect in our household. But it is a difficult challenge to keep the live tree, not completely becoming just all fire tinder.
Yes.
That's the hard part, is making sure, because I forget how is your watering schedule for your live tree? I don't think I did a very good job at it this year. I think it's drying up pretty quick. I'm trying to make up for lost time and just like a pitcher of water almost every day now.
Yeah, so the key is to make sure you've got that end of the tree sawed off so that it's actually taking the water, because I've made that mistake in years past where we didn't do that.
Filling it,
and you're just filling it. I'm just like, why is no water coming up into the tree? So it's a learning process. So this year we've got it pretty down. I'm the guy in the house who handles like watering all of our plants and keeping them alive and all of that kind of stuff. So it's I just add it to the rotation with the rest of the stuff.
Fair enough. Okay.
So it's just another plant to water while I'm making my rounds.
That makes sense. There you go.
Yeah.
I'll have to think of it that way for future years, because this one, I think it's still sucking up some of the water, but I'm worried that it dried out way too quick. But we'll keep it around for another, I don't know, about 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, there you go. If you're just joining us, I'm your guest host this morning. My name is Dan Shafer. You can join our conversation here, 855-752-4842. We're broadcasting live from Radio Park in Racine, Wisconsin. We had a terrific guest here with us before the break here. Alice Herman, who is a writer for The Guardian, who wrote this piece about the Uline company and the Uline family that owns it, and the pretty clear problems that rise because of this. That it seems like, if you're really boiling it down here and oversimplifying this very complicated story, you have two of the biggest donors to Donald Trump, who has focused on immigrants and illegal immigration to a great degree in his campaign. Two of his biggest donors are potentially breaking immigration law, and if this story is accurate and I have no reason to believe otherwise, of course. It seems like a real problem, and I think when people talk about the illegal immigration issue, so much of the focus seems to be on the individual and not on the corporation or the company or the contractor or whoever it might be, the farmers who are hiring these individuals. So it's the type of thing where, should we be scrutinizing these individuals who are trying to make a decision for themselves, or should we be scrutinizing the companies who are potentially breaking the law and at the same time, advocating for some real hardline anti-immigration policies?
Yeah, it's a very important story to be keeping an eye on. I know that there's a lot of folks that are going about their holiday routines, not paying a whole lot of attention right now to the news. This is one that, folks, you should be sharing around with your friends, your family. Like, this needs to be talked about, because I think you put it really perfectly, Dan, where a lot of the emphasis from this conversation, this debate, goes on to the immigrants that are coming here, or the specifically at the border. And it talks about how, we need stronger borders. Stronger borders would not prevent a company from doing something like this. The company using its means to go and fly in these people that are on different types of visas than they're supposed to be for utilizing employees. These aren't work visas, from my understanding of the reporting. And then sending these folks back after they've hit kind of the time on those tourist visas is a very, very crude use of what these visa types are for. And then at the same time, when the right hand is doing that, the left hand is paying for campaign ads to the tune of millions, if not billions of dollars, because some of this stuff is still undisclosed. We don't know how much money was fully spent here in 2024 because of the messed up campaign finance laws that we have, not only here in the state of Wisconsin, but around the country. And so we truly don't know how much money was spent by these folks on ads that were demonizing the same people that they're bringing here to try to make their profit margins larger, because that's what this is all about. They want to be able to keep their costs as low as possible with labor, like from Mexican immigrants, and then be able to sell and keep as many of their profits as possible so that they can continue to do this system, because it works, Dan, too. That's the thing, is it's working for them. They donated a couple, I believe, $20 million directly to U.S. Senator Ron Johnson in 2022, from what we know through campaign finance. These same two donors, they got like a 200.
I think it was more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a 10-fold, 20-fold tax break that they got, though, then, when Senator Johnson was one of the deciding votes in Trump's first term, when they did similar donations when Ron Johnson was up for re-election in 2016.
Right. He created kind of this carve out in the Trump tax cut law from his first term that, netted the Ulines hundreds of millions of dollars after spending tens of millions of dollars supporting his campaign. I want to read one more line from this report from Alice Herman at the Guardian, talking about, some of the difficulty that Uline has in staffing their warehouses in states like Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. And it said, I'm reading directly from the story here, the Mexican workers have an implicit understanding that they should tell border officials that they are entering the U.S. to be trained at Uline, sources alleged. One Uline document seen by The Guardian, which was used by a Uline employee in Mexico to enter the U.S., said the employee would be receiving training in warehouse safety, understanding how to use vehicle-mounted unit devices, understanding how to identify warehouse locations, and on and on. Legal experts said B-1 visas are intended to be used for short-term visits, no longer than 6 months, and the workers are not meant to engage in, quote, productive employment at the time. So, look, immigration law is complicated. These B-1 visas or all the different, worker visas that we have in this country are complicated. It does seem like Uline is exploiting this to their own benefit and doing so at a time where they are backing the most anti-immigration president that we have had in this country in quite some time. So again, I will encourage folks to really spend some time with this one. And I think it's one that we should be following here at Civic Media, and it deserves a little bit more attention elsewhere beyond that, because the Ulines are some of the most important donors in the Republican universe, in the Trump MAGA universe now, and I think and they are right in our backyard here in southeastern Wisconsin. Uline is based in Pleasant Prairie. They are, a Wisconsin-based company doing these types of practices in this particular moment as Trump is promising mass deportations. I think this is a big deal.
And I'm not a betting man, Dan, but I have a feeling these two donors are going to have a large influence in the upcoming April 1st election here in Wisconsin. So this isn't something
if history is a guide at all. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not tuning out news or politics right now. They, if anything, seem to be getting more and more involved, if we've learned anything from this most recent election. And so I have a feeling they're going to be big players when it comes to Wisconsin's state Supreme Court race that's coming up in just over 3 months here now.
Yep, they were big players last time. I imagine that they will be big players again. Luke is going to be sticking around with us here in the second hour of the show on Matenaer On Air. We're maybe going to get into some lighter topics after the break here. But if you have thoughts on that one, thoughts on anything else, random questions for us, the lines are open, 855-752-4842. Give us a call, shoot us a text, join us on the live stream, leave us a comment. We'll be with you for the next hour here with Luke Mathers. Stick with us here on Matenaer On Air. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. I'm your guest host this morning. My name is Dan Shafer. Thank you for joining us. I'm digging the music selection there. I'm a big Nirvana fan myself, so thanks for that one, Calvin.
Doing a great job on the board. Yeah.
And that's all right.
He's so enthralled with the music. Yeah, he was.
That's all right. We're discombobulated, I guess, about the. Nirvana's pretty great, so we're gonna get into it. If you're just joining us, I'm your guest host today. My name is Dan Shafer. I'm the founder of the Recombobulation area and the political editor at Civic Media. Joined for this hour of the show by Civic Media's own Luke Mathers. I was trying to think of what your title even is at this point with the you're just kind of you're just Luke. I think your title is just the company's official Luke.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. It has changed. Like, I have been here since day one, and so it's kind of evolved as we've evolved as a network. And so it is. I think Civic Media's own, or just Civic Media's Luke, that works. I'm happy with that.
The official Luke of Civic Media. That you just do everything. So we always appreciate all the things that you're doing here across the network.
It's the nice part about working on the day after Christmas is one. I don't know. Are you a big reader or anything like that, Dan? Were you reading a lot of books this year?
Not this year, because I spend so much time writing that I don't want to escape that with words.
That's fair.
I'll listen to audiobooks and stuff like that. So I'll do my reading while I'm doing my dishes and stuff. But yeah.
Gotcha. One of the best books I read this year is called Stolen Focus, because I do believe this is kind of an outside of work thing that social media, Twitter specifically, but short form stuff has really the notifications on smartphones, the devices that we carry around in our pockets, our addiction to the internet has really changed the way that we all process information, the way that we think. And so Stolen Focus is this book that I read this year, kind of outlining a lot of the different aspects that feeds into that. And it's this kind of greater conversation about the relationship that we have with technology. And one of the things it talks about is you lose your focus because you go into you don't have the opportunity to go into things called flow. So when you're just working on something, and I think we all experience flow a little differently. But the nice thing on December 26th is I'm not getting as many notifications. I'm not being asked as many questions, so I'm feeling a good flow today, and it's a very productive day for me here, at least around the office. I'm just trying to avoid the cookies that I brought in as extra. That's my only distraction here the day after Christmas.
I mean, the post Christmas dessert game is a big one. I've got kids who've going through all the Christmas cookies. There was one that we brought to our Christmas gathering this week. So we're in Milwaukee, and we went to Purple Door Ice Cream. Went to Purple Door Ice Cream, and they had an eggnog flavored ice cream and a gingerbread flavored ice cream, and they were both awesome. So we just both got a couple pints of those to bring along. So I'm trying to not eat the whole pint of eggnog ice cream all at once, but
that sounds like a challenge in itself. There's a reason I think we all have New Year's resolutions right after this time of year, because we got to be better about some of those snacks. The snacking that happens around the holidays is definitely affecting me, for sure.
What's happening from a dietary standpoint is so we're just going to overlook the whole problem here. Calvin, do we have a caller on the line that's going to join us today?
Yeah, we have Tom from LA on the line.
All right. Welcome, Tom. You're on Matenaer On Air.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Luke. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
You as well.
I just think it's really important, and I think what you guys are doing at Civic Media is so important. But we have got to talk daily to bring whether you're on the left or the right, but we have all got to come together and realize that we have to restore government back to we the people. And the only way we do that is by getting money out of politics and understanding what Citizens United was about, and about how the media actually benefits from people being in the dark about money in politics. And I really, really appreciate, whenever I get a Uline catalog for my small business, here, first thing it doesn't go in the dumpster, because I am not giving anything to the Uline family, or to anything to do with Widow Hendricks, or anything to do with the Bradley Foundation or Koch brothers, any of those different groups of billionaires. We shouldn't have billionaires, and we should need to go back to FDR's tax rate of 90% for anyone over that makes over, back then it was $3 million. Now it might be like $30 million or something like that. And we definitely need to get lobbyists out of politics. We need to get money out of politics, and we need to restore government back to we the people. And this goes for every single issue under the sun, whether it's gun safety, whether it's childcare, health care, your rent, your mortgage, anything. It all has to do with money in politics and who it is that is benefiting from the tax cuts and the U lines. And I appreciate that. So I hope that you guys continue to show the disclosure of the people that are actually giving this money as well. If we can't get money out right now, at least we can disclose it's not Americans for Prosperity, or it's not whatever. It is the U lines.
Right. It's not a restoration pack. It's Dick and Liz Uline. And yeah, I think that's why, and thanks for the call, Tom. And I think that's why it's so important to, when there are these stories about these political mega donors, like the one we talked about with Alice Herman from The Guardian, to really, bring some sunlight to these issues and talk about what exactly the U-lines are doing. And then just to that point on Citizens United, I think that's why so many people are focused so much on the Supreme Court, on the politicization of the court. How'd I do with that, Luke? Didn't sound good.
That was great. 10 out of 10.
But I think, just about the politics of the court. And I think that's why people need to pay attention to, things like the upcoming Wisconsin Supreme Court race and the impact of, the presidential politics on this elections as well, because I think, we're going to have a situation where Donald Trump is now going to nominate the majority, probably, of the United States Supreme Court, which is a pretty frightening prospect, and maybe would have been a topic we should have talked a little bit more about in September and October, but that's all behind us. Luke, we were going to talk about the Bucks, and we've spent a half hour not talking about the Bucks. So when we come back from the break, you've got your Bucks hat on. We're going to talk more about the Milwaukee Bucks, who did not play on Christmas, and we'll talk about that too. Stick with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. I am not Jane Matenaer, nor am I Greg Bach. My name is Dan Shafer, and I am your guest host this morning. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here on this December 26th. Hope you all had a good Christmas holiday, however you're celebrating. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're joining us. And joining us here as our guest for this hour of the show is Civic Media's own Luke Mathers. And Luke, when I asked you to join the show today, I know we're both big fans of the Milwaukee Bucks, and so I wanted to have some time to talk Bucks on the show. We went through the first half hour of your guest spot here, and we didn't get a chance to talk any Bucks. So let's talk some Bucks right now. Did you miss not watching them yesterday on the Christmas Day broadcast?
I did. It was hard for me to watch it. We do a lot of traveling on Christmas Day itself. We go and visit Kelsey's grandparents in northern Illinois, and so spent a lot of time on the I-39, I-88 corridor yesterday. So tough to watch, but always I'll stream the game. I'll listen to it in the car if that's what it takes. But it was sad that there were $0 to try to watch or listen to on Christmas Day, and Giannis was upset about it.
Yeah.
I forget
my
who
friend
he was.
my friend Eric Name, who writes for The Athletic, had this report out where he interviewed Giannis, and he was talking about they were a little thrown off by not being in the Christmas Day game. And I think I think it's been like 7 or 8 years in a row now that the Bucks have been, one of the featured teams on the Christmas Day game, in large part because of Giannis Antetokounmpo, the success of the team. Look, the deer imagery is right there. They could really lean into that for the Bucks if they wanted to. It was, when the schedule came out, I was a little surprised that the Bucks were not part of this. Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the biggest stars in the sport, and not to feature him on the Christmas Day games. There were a couple good games yesterday, I must say. I was being snarky about it, saying, wild that the NBA didn't have any games on yesterday, just to kind of be snarky about them not featuring the Bucks. I did watch the end of Lakers Warriors, and that had a pretty fun ending.
That was a good ending to that game. We were the dogs were opening their Christmas presents during that part, so we were back at the house, and we were watching that. I did not realize they were going to have a 9:30 p.m. tip-off for the Nuggets versus the
Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, and we watched maybe the first quarter, and then we were kind of wrapping up for the night. But I missed who the first two matchups were. I'm assuming Eastern Conference teams earlier in the day. Did the Celtics play?
The Celtics lost to the Sixers. The lowly 76ers got a spot.
It would have had to have been one of those two teams, though. I think that's what the matchup would have had to have been, was with either the Bucks versus the Celtics or the Bucks versus the 76ers. We've got a growing thing going on with Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers, too, so maybe that could have been an Eastern Conference matchup. But I fear that was the reason why the Bucks kind of got left off the Christmas Day marquee, was because the Celtics already had a ticket booked with the 76ers, and I think that would have been the biggest matchup for Christmas Day, which they have had in years past. The Bucks Celtics on Christmas is a good game to watch, and I'm shocked that they left it off the lineup this year.
Yeah, and it, Bucks Knicks have been fun over the years. Giannis always puts on a show in the Garden when they have some of the games there. That I think that was a pretty good game. The Knicks Spurs, and then Timberwolves against the Mavericks, 76ers Celtics, Lakers Warriors, Nuggets and Suns. So it was a bummer not to have the Bucks in there, but I think it is interesting what the NFL is doing as well. I ended up watching a little bit more NFL than NBA yesterday. I'm in my fantasy football league's championship, so there are some
congratulations.
You too. There are some fantasy implications to some of the players yesterday. I'm still feeling pretty good about my chances as well. It's going to come down for me. It's going to come down to Jaden Daniels. Oh, you have to play against Lamar. That's tough.
Yeah, Lamar put up some good numbers yesterday. Jaden Daniels has got a good matchup though this week. Washington's got
they're playing Atlanta at home on the Sunday night game, and so Jaden Daniels has been the MVP of my team this year.
There you go.
And
I've had a just balanced team. That's where my success has been. I haven't had any of the explosive fantasy performances. I survived last week. playing against Jonathan Taylor and Chuba Hubbard. So
Oh,
like
wow.
the guy that I was playing against, his two running backs put up 70 points between the two of them, and I still outlasted. So
Wow,
that's
wow,
how
wow.
solid my team is, because there's no like all stars. I don't have a Jaden Daniels. Bo Nix has been really solid for me though,
Bo
and I've been
Nix.
very excited about that. In a keeper league, it's very important to get some of those good rookie quarterbacks really early,
Yeah.
like late in their first year, because I get to keep them now for a good amount of time. So I'm hoping that one works out. But yeah, I didn't watch that much NFL yesterday either. It is a mix for me on Christmas Day of trying to spend as much time as we can with the family. Kelsey's brother and her uncle put on the Netflix game, but where we were, they kind of don't have the best internet, and so Netflix just kept buffering. It wasn't a
Mm.
problem, I think, as bad as the Logan Paul Mike Tyson fight, but like Netflix just did not want to work on the Wi-Fi that we were on yesterday. So it kept lagging, and we were like, we're just gonna turn it off then, because it's not worth it.
If you're just joining us, I am Dan Shafer. I'm your guest host this morning on Matenaer On Air. Luke Mathers is joining us. We're talking a little sports. So if you want to join the conversation, let us know how you were, if you're a sports fan, how you were spending your Christmas Day. Were you watching some NFL? Were you watching some NBA? Did you just tune in for Beyonce at
That's what my wife did.
the halftime performance of the Ravens-Texans game? Let us know what you think on that. And let us know if you missed watching the Milwaukee Bucks on that as well. 855-752-4842. So let's talk about what's next for our beloved Milwaukee
Yeah.
Bucks. I'm going to the game tonight. My brother's in town, so we're going to the game tonight.
There you go. That should be a good game too.
Should be a good game. They're playing the Brooklyn Nets. The Bucks had a terrible start to the season, started 2-8, but have been, let's say, recombobulating a little bit since then, Luke. Getting themselves together, going on a little run. They win the NBA Cup. Everyone was talking about it, the NBA Cup fever that we all had. A little bit of a letdown in a couple of the games after that, dropping one to Cleveland right after. Giannis and Dame have been in and out of the lineup. But they've got a few very winnable games on the schedule coming up here. They play Brooklyn tonight, and then they go to Chicago, and then they go to Indiana on New Year's Eve, and then Brooklyn and Portland and Toronto and San Antonio. So they've got a stretch of winnable games here. It's kind of one of their softer parts of the schedule. I think as we get closer into spring, we'll see some more of those higher profile matchups. Whether it's against those top contenders in the East, the big names from the West, whoever it might be. But how are you feeling, big picture, about the Bucks right now and where they stand in the Eastern Conference?
I'm feeling pretty good about it. They've got it seems that both Giannis and Dame are clicking a lot better than at any point that they had last season. Like it very much, there was so much excitement and anticipation with Dame coming to Milwaukee last year, and it never, you could never see Giannis playing with Dame and Chris Middleton like Drew was playing with the two of them. Like
Yeah.
everybody talked about the new big three in town. It didn't really feel like a big three throughout last season because of the very abbreviated time that they had together before the season started. And so I think in the NBA Cup final game, which was an exhibition game, and shout out to Dame and a lot of the other Bucks players. I believe they're taking some of those winnings, $500,000 each player got. Dame, I know, is donated to support staff throughout the Bucks organization, just doing tremendous things with that this holiday season. But the performance that they put on the court that day, like they were clicking and they were looking good and they were looking dominant against a team in the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's a formidable team right there.
It's the top team in the West right now.
Right.
Yeah.
They're looking good on all cylinders, and they came into Vegas, and the Bucks kind of put the kibosh on their offense, which is not something that the Thunder have really seen happen at all this season. And so that felt really, really good. I'm okay with a little bit of the load management right now. Like
Sure.
both Giannis and Dame took off over the weekend when they were down in Chicago. Still took care of business. Chris Middleton put up, I believe, 21, 22 points as being kind of the workhorse. We're seeing a lot of production still out of the other players, which has been really, really important. Because last year it felt like either Dame or Giannis had to do it all, and if they couldn't one night, the Bucks fell flat. And so we're seeing some more of the contributing pieces get developed into the system. They're playing well together, and I'm excited. I'm always excited for the Bucks, but I'm feeling pretty good about where we are at this point in the season. There are a lot of people being like, "Oh no, do we have to blow it all up?" It felt almost like some people were ready to hit the alarm bells like they were in Brooklyn
after that 2-8 start. Yeah,
yeah, and it felt like it was like, oh, this is the big three that didn't happen with KD and everybody else,
Kyrie
Kyrie
and Harden.
and
Yeah.
Harden, all in Brooklyn, and I'm grateful that those voices weren't the ones making any decisions in our front office, and we kind of wrote out that 2-8 start, and we're feeling much better now. But I'm feeling pretty good, Dan.
I'm feeling pretty good too, and I think the main thing, I think the biggest X factor of the whole season, I think, is Chris Middleton's health, because he has clearly dealt with a lot of issues over the past few years, and if he's healthy, going into the playoffs, going into the second half of the season, whatever it might be, like that's the biggest thing to me that can give them a chance to contend. Because if Chris isn't healthy, the prospects of them contending deep into May and June, that it becomes a little bit more limited. But if Chris can be healthy, and I think if they can figure out the rest of the rotation, and if they, I think one of the upsides of Chris missing some time is I think they were able to figure out, which of the kind of 3-and-D wing role players can really step up for the team as well. So whether it's Taurean Prince or Gary Trent or AJ Green, who I think has been terrific for the team, the Dairy Bird, AJ Green.
The Dairy Bird.
And I think he's been terrific. I think he's solidified his spot as a rotation player. Pat Connaughton kind of has fallen out of the rotation. We'll see if they, maybe make a move with him before the trade deadline. That seems to me the most likely place to kind of upgrade the roster, is maybe find another piece on the wing that can fill that role. But if Chris is healthy, if they can figure out some of these role players, I still think that, they have a real chance to make some noise in the playoffs this year.
I agree. And it'll be interesting to see, because in the East, the biggest hurdle that I think the Bucks will face, if healthy, if Chris can stay good and in the rotation and be contributing, is going to be their matchup against Boston. Because Boston, even coming off the championship last season, still looking like a formidable force. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the Bucks and the Celtics match up. And that's, again, just one more reason why not having that matchup yesterday on Christmas Day,
I know,
just kind of was unfortunate for not only us Bucks fans, but I think the NBA viewers as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that was such a miss. And it's just, I think the NBA should better recognize that Giannis Antetokounmpo is like one of the biggest draws in the sport. He was number one in All-Star voting last year, and they don't feature him the way they maybe like. He had more votes than LeBron, right? Like, it's just
Dame
ridiculous.
Was the MVP of the All-Star game.
Dame was the MVP of the All-Star game. Like,
believe he won the 3-point contest last year too, didn't he?
3-point contest.
Yeah, it was a Bucks sweep almost of some of the events around All-Star Week last year, and they didn't put them on Christmas Day. What are they doing?
I know. Well, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe Giannis needs just another chip on his shoulder. We know how competitive he can be.
That's true.
Just another slight, another slight to build upon as well. Luke is going to stick with us for one more segment here on Matenaer On Air. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm your guest host today, Dan Shafer, and we'll be right back.
Milwaukee Bucks, green and growing, better each year. Green and growing, the Bucks don't stop here.
Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. I am not Jane Matenaer. I am Dan Shafer. I am your guest host this morning on Matenaer On Air. Joined by my guest for this hour of the show, Luke, Civic Media's own Luke Mathers. Luke, thank you so much for joining us for this, spending some time on your December 26th morning with us here on Matenaer On Air. We really appreciate it.
Well, we're having some fun because one of the ongoing jokes, folks, for you listeners that may have not had the opportunity to ever tune in to when I was hosting any programs and Dan was my guest, the goal was always to try to work in some Milwaukee Bucks talk. And there's always so much other news going on across the state of Wisconsin and around the country that the Bucks talk always got pushed off to the end and then usually was either very abbreviated or missed altogether. So when you asked me to jump on and wanted to talk about the Bucks, at least for some portion of today, I get it was a little delayed. We waited until the third segment of the hour to get started with it. I jumped at the opportunity.
Well, I love to talk Bucks. We love our Milwaukee Bucks here. And so, all right. So one question I think that I think is going to be a story for this next stretch of the regular season is whether Giannis is the MVP. Giannis Antetokounmpo having an absolutely unbelievable season right now. He is, I believe, leading the NBA in scoring, and is top 5 in rebounding, and is averaging a career high in assists. Luke, do you think he's going to win his third MVP this year?
I thought that he was going to win his third MVP last year because Giannis was putting up numbers last season that no other player had ever done before. I forget the specific stat line. I want to say it was like averaging 30 and 15, 30 points and 15 rebounds. And there was never before been a player to do it.
It was averaging 30 points on better than 60% shooting.
Oh, okay.
Which I think the last time that had happened was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah. And so like, just a historic season last season, and I think Giannis is just consistently performing at such a high level that the voters for the MVP kind of almost diminish a little bit of what he's doing on the court because it's just so routine for Giannis, but nobody else. And so I really hope he wins his third MVP this year. I think there's a little bit, like you alluded to, chip on his shoulder from last season. Like anything that he can do to find that fuel to go out there. He's fueled on chips on his shoulder and dad jokes, it seems. And he's really, really good at the dad jokes, and he's really good at proving the naysayers wrong. And so I think if he keeps up and performs in the second half of the season as well as he has this first half, I think it's got to be pretty universal that he's the MVP this season.
Yeah, and well, I think it might again come down to him and Nikola Jokic, because I think they are the top 2 scorers in the league, and they just both fill up the stat sheet so much. Like Jokic is the best passing big man in the league. Giannis, certainly not a bad passer in his own right. Both getting, blocks and steals and things like that. Giannis might have the edge on the defensive end compared to Jokic as well. It might be, have to do with how well each team does as well, in addition to that, because, a lot of times those voters will look at, whether they carried their team to a top seed or whether, how the season shaped up and whatever it might be. So I do think it probably is going to come down to Giannis and Jokic. I mean, they're clearly the 2 best players of the 2020s so far. I think, what is it? Every MVP. Well, there was the one Joel Embiid MVP, which we probably shouldn't even talk about because it was such a fraudulent MVP. It just as everything else Joel Embiid does. I'd rather Jokic win a 4th MVP than Joel Embiid win another one. But I think it is going to come down to those 2 and just whether, the West is a lot tougher than the East this year. And so Denver is probably going to have a little bit more of a difficult time, kind of climbing up the standings. The Bucks, I think, will have a little bit easier time, climbing up, as we've seen, just as they started out 2-8 and then went on this run. They're already the 5 seed, even though they're just a couple games over 500 at this point. Whereas in the West, Denver, similar record, also the 5 seed, but tied right there with the Lakers, Clippers, right there with the Suns, Timberwolves. That's a much more competitive conference. So that might factor into it as well. But I think, for all the time that we have enjoyed Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee, he just seems to get better and better. And each season he seems to do something new. And I think the new thing that he's doing this year, he's not shooting any threes. And he always will. He'll pull up and try to fire off a couple of them here and there. And
I still
always
hold my breath every single time.
I do too. It's always when he makes it, it's just like no, yes, all right. But this year I think is shooting a career low in the number of 3-point attempts. So he's shooting much better from the mid-range. So I think he's really kind of focused his game in and around the paint, as always. He's the best paint scorer, best transition scorer in the league. But if he can start knocking down some of those shots from that like 15 to 18-foot range, get some of those fallaways, use that length of his to just shoot up and over the top of some of the smaller defenders who like to play him in a more physical way, try to get him draw those charges and all that. If he can shoot up over the top of him, give him another dimension to his game, it's just gonna be that much better.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch. I hope you have a blast tonight at the game. I'm jealous. I'm trying to look at the schedule to see when I can make it out to Milwaukee for a game this season, but that should be a lot of fun. Giannis is always fun to watch, and
well, we'll have to make it to a game together before the end of the season. We should make a point to do that.
All right, that
Luke
is our
Mathers,
2025 New Year's resolution right there, folks. You all heard.
There we go. All right, well, Civic Media's own Luke Mathers, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Matenaer On Air, and thanks to all of you for joining the broadcast today. Thanks to Calvin on the board. You'll be listening to Todd Alba Show up next after the Matenaer On Air. So stick with us across the Civic Media Network. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's keep recombobulating.
Thanks, man. That was great.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being there for the whole hour.
Yeah,
really appreciate
absolutely.
it.
That was a good time.